Good afternoon. My name is Evan Branken. I'm a youth minister for Our Lady of Victory Catholic Church in Davenport, Iowa. Doing my first YouTube video, so forgive me if it's a little rough around the edges. But I wanted to offer some ways for prayer during Holy Week for all those who are stuck at home or are missing their usual liturgies. This is obviously a time of, a lot of innovation, but also of a lot of loss of the things that are comfortable and familiar to us. And many of us are missing those things. Holy Week is a time with lots of traditions, both in the church and in our families. And it's hard when we can't have those things, and it only makes it feel worse. All of the other things that are going on feel worse when you can't have your familiar rituals and your familiar traditions. So I wanted to offer an opportunity and a way to create some new traditions and some new rituals in families, and to bring some of the prayers of the church kind of home and make them a little bit more accessible from the home. So with that in mind, I drew on an ancient way of praying during Holy Week called Tenebrae. Tenebrae means darkness. It's a Latin word for darkness. And originally, when the church celebrated our liturgies a little bit differently in terms of timing and structure, we had to move some prayers around during Holy Week because Holy Week was so different from the regular week's prayer schedule. And so some prayers that would normally happen very early in the morning couldn't happen then anymore, so they would move them to the night before, and everything would be dark. And so they named them Tenebrae prayers, and they gave them their own special rituals, which are actually pretty easy to copy at home. So originally, they would pray 15 psalms as part of these morning prayers, and they just started lighting a candle to represent each psalm, and as the psalm would end, they would blow out a candle. Until at the end, you were just in darkness, and the last part of the prayer was in the dark and the quiet of the night. And first night would be Wednesday night, and then Thursday night, and then Friday night. Now, 70, 80 years ago, there were some changes in how we approached liturgy and how we scheduled things. And so that practice didn't have to happen anymore, but the practice of connecting candles with how we worship, especially during Holy Week, hasn't disappeared. It's just adapted. For example, I think there's a Jesuit tradition where Jesuits would pray on Good Friday. They would pray the 7 last words of Christ, 7 things Jesus Christ said from the cross, and after each one, they would blow out one of the candles. They'd have 7 candles. That's one of the options. I've created a little at-home version that you can do. And then the other option is, the other tradition that exists is to have one candle representing each of the 12 apostles following the Last Supper, and one additional candle for Jesus. And that's what you see here. We've got one large candle in the middle for Jesus, illuminating a crucifix, and then 12 smaller kind of votive style candles that are ranged in front and around, representing the apostles who are with Jesus on the night of the Last Supper. And this is really easy to set up at home. You just need an image of Jesus, a flat space on a table somewhere, and some candles or other lights. I mean, if you have the little electric tea lights, you could do those too. Really, obviously, because it's all about the interplay between light and darkness and prayer. It's hard to do it with non-light producing objects, but this is an option for you if you have some candles at home. So you'd set them all up, and then you can kind of link it to whatever other Holy Thursday or Good Friday prayers you do. So if you pray the Stations of the Cross, pray the Stations of the Cross. And then when you finish praying the Stations of the Cross, you can close that with a meditation on the words that Jesus says from the cross. Or you can work it into the Stations of the Cross. Likewise, if you normally would attend maybe Thursday night's foot washing mass, right? Maundy Thursday, and the Lord's Supper. If you'd normally attend that, maybe as a family, watch that. There will be live stream versions. There will be recorded masses out there that you can watch. Watch that. But if you're like me, watching a video doesn't really help you enter into it yourself. And normally on Holy Thursday, there'd be a long period of adoration after the Mass, and that's actually my favorite part. So this is a way to kind of give you that chance to have that deep prayer and reflection time afterwards. So you still watch it, but then have this set up and ready in your home for prayer afterwards. So I'll kind of walk you through it a little bit. You have your 12 small candles and your one large candle, your image of Jesus, and you light them all and you turn out all the other lights. Now, obviously, we have some lights on in the background so you can see me during this video, but normally these candles would be the only thing that's lit up. And on our parish website, on the youth ministry portion of the website, there's a button that says Holy Thursday and Good Friday, liturgy or Tenebrae options, and it'll take you to some documents that have all the prayers, all the scriptural readings, and a set of directions for each one. So once it's dark out, or once it's dark in your house, after whatever other prayers that you're going to do for Holy Thursday or Good Friday, you would light these candles, you'd turn out the lights, and there's Bible verses. Relatively short selections. The longest one is maybe 9 or 10 verses. Most of them are only a verse. Have one person in your family read that Bible verse slowly, quietly, prayerfully, and then they would pick a candle, one of the small candles, and they would blow it out. And you sit with that a little bit and you just kind of let it soak in. You let the reading soak in. You let the act of blowing the candle soak in. You let the prayer atmosphere kind of permeate everything that you do. And then you would read the next verse. The next family member can read the next verse, or maybe mom and dad go back and forth reading them, and the kids blow out the candles. You can make it your own, however you want. But you read the next verse, and then the next verse. So for the Holy Thursday version, your first verse is about Judas. Judas is the very first apostle to leave on Thursday night. So you'd read a gospel passage talking about how Judas goes out into the night and leaves the dinner. And so you'd read that passage and then blow it out. Judas is the first to go. And then you'd read each passage after that, and they're going to walk you through the end of the Last Supper as Jesus and the apostles go out to the Garden of Gethsemane, out to the Mount of Olives, into this darkness where Jesus is going to suffer and be really tempted and have to offer his will completely over to God. And you'll read each verse or each set of verses, small set of verses, and then after each one, again, you blow out another candle. Each time meditating on this fact that none of the apostles were really able to walk with Jesus this whole night. As it goes, as the evening progresses, more and more of them just fall asleep. And the Bible tells us that they fell asleep out of grief. So strong was their grief that they could not stay awake. And even Peter, who promised with so much bravado that he would never abandon Jesus, never deny Jesus, even he in the end falls asleep. And Andrew, one of his first followers, the one who brings Peter to Jesus in the first place, he can't make it either. Most of the apostles, Jesus doesn't even take with them. They leave the larger part of the group in the garden, and then they go a little farther away, Jesus and his closest friends and followers. And so we know that they're, almost from the beginning, they're out of the picture. You don't even have to think about them. Until finally it's just Jesus and his three closest friends, and Peter and Andrew, for example, are already fallen asleep. And Jesus is praying, and he prays for hours in this garden by himself. And every time he comes back to the followers, he finds them asleep again. He wakes them up and he goes and prays some more, and he tells them, pray so that you don't have to undergo this test. They can't do it. Even John, the beloved disciple, the one whom Jesus loves, the one who reclines rests his head on Jesus' chest at the Last Supper. He's the closest of all of his followers, the only one who's going to even make it to the crucifixion and be at the feet of Jesus at the cross. Even he can't stay awake. When you've finished going through the stories in the gospel, you'll have one candle left burning and one passage left from the Bible. Now, on this last one, you don't blow out the candle immediately. And this last one is the beginning of John's Gospel, and I'm just going to read it. It's the only one of the Gospel readings from here that I'm going to read, but it's just perfect for this kind of thing. A reading from the Gospel according to John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came to be through him, and without him nothing came to be. What came to be through him was life, and this life was the light of the human race. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And at that point, for a little while, however long you have left in your prayer, sit with that one candle illuminating the image of Jesus Christ that you have. No matter how great the darkness, all it takes is a little light to banish it. Traditionally, Holy Thursday adoration goes until midnight, and at midnight, the tabernacles are all empty, and all of the Eucharist that's held in reserve for Friday is taken to a hidden place. And even the monstrance, or wherever, oftentimes there's not even a monstrance on Holy Thursday night. But they take Jesus and they hide him away. And that's at midnight. So obviously some families are busy. You don't have enough time to pray all night. But if you do, don't go later than midnight. Tie this into our normal Holy Thursday traditions. Help this be a way to connect with what we would normally do on Holy Thursday night. And just make sure however you do it, that you enter deep into that prayer. You can use periods of silence between the gospel readings to let people meditate. Or you can use music. If you've got favorite Christian music, favorite artists who you find to be very prayerful in their music, or who write and sing and play songs that are very relevant to this part of the Passion and to the things that Jesus would have been feeling and experiencing, I would encourage that use. My personal picks for this would be Taizé chant from the French monastic community. They've got beautiful songs meditating on various aspects of the night in the garden. And those are available on YouTube or on iTunes. You can find lots of great options. Another personal favorite would be Audrey Assad. She has beautiful, very prayerful music to Jesus, for the Holy Spirit, in times of sorrow and distress as well. And I'm sure you have your favorites. Obviously, those are some options that I would use and that I'll probably use tomorrow when I pray this myself. Use what works for you. Make this your own. Find a way to make this a family tradition. And it can connect to the old, and it can also be something new for you. And you can do it maybe even in the years to come, even when we can be at church. You can use this as a way to pray during Holy Week. As always, we want you to know here at Our Lady of Victory, we're praying for you. We care about you. And if you have any need of us, please don't hesitate to contact our parish offices, and we'll do whatever we can to help you in this great time of crisis. And as always, Mary, Queen of Victory, pray for us.